Michael Thompson konnte gewonnen werden als Keynote Speaker und ich verspreche Ihnen jetzt schon einen wirklich tollen Vortrag. Michael Thompson ist nicht irgendwer in der Welt des Designs. Er ist internationaler Designstratege, er ist Berater, Moderator und Keynote Speaker. Michael Thompson hat gefördert und macht das immer noch und entwickelt designorientierte Strategiekonzepte für internationale Unternehmen. Und zwar ist er in der Designbranche tätig, aber nicht nur. Und das ist auch das Besondere an ihm. Er ist auch tätig zum Beispiel in Sektoren wie Industrie, Finanzen bis hin zu elektronischen Medien und Stadtverwaltungen. Michael Thompson ist ein Mensch, der über den eigenen Tellerrand hinausschaut. Während seiner Zeit als Präsident des Bureau of European Design Associations hat er sich sehr stark für die Entwicklung einer gemeinsamen europäischen Designpolitik eingesetzt durch die EU und ihm ist es gelungen, die Aufnahme von Designpolitik in die Innovationsstrategie der EU. Das ist was ganz Besonderes. Der Titel seiner heutigen Präsentation: The Global Agenda for Design. Begrüßen Sie Michael Thompson.
So, guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. Ich würde sagen, das ist nicht meine erste Mal hier in Wien, aber es ist immer sehr schön, wiederzukommen, besonders wenn das Wetter so schön ist. Es war natürlich für mich eine kleine Überraschung, dass ich jetzt auf der Bühne stehe und hoffentlich habe ich was zu sagen, das für Sie einen kleinen Kontext setzen können, so ein internationales Kontext für Dialoge, wo Design und Marketing sind genannt als Kernstrategien für Geschäfte, für Nationen und ähnlich für Gesellschaft, für das Gesellschaft. Und da ich ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen kann, das ist leider nur ein bisschen und ich möchte jetzt weiter auf Englisch führen. So please allow me to speak in English. Thank you. I thought that I would talk today about some design policies. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes. And I'm going to talk about some design policies from Asia, the Middle East, and from Europe. And I'm going to talk then through 3 or 4 little case studies. One showing policy in action in Europe, and then 3 studies from industry. One from a national broadcaster, one from a shoe manufacturer in Brazil, and if we have time, one from a city in the UK. And then I'm going to close with a few comments about dialogue and the need for creativity. So here goes, let's see what happens. There we go. So I'm based in London. I'm originally from Northern Ireland, and I moved to London in 1995 and set up Design Connect, my little business. And since that time, I've had the chance to work internationally all over the world. And I think one of the great things about being involved in design and marketing is that it is a global business. And I think that gives us an opportunity to have a global view of the problems and issues that we have in our own societies and our own countries. And I spend a lot of time asking people, where are you going? And what values do you stand for? And I think these issues are at the heart of businesses that are successful. Businesses that understand direction and values are successful. And that is true for nations. And of course, dialogue is not necessarily a tennis match. Somebody says something back. It's much more complex than that. And I spend a lot of time facilitating powerful conversations between groups of people with very different agendas and different ideas, trying to use design-based methods to help them come to solutions. And internal communications are issues that are very important for clients. You have to tell your stories. You have to be able to reach simplicity in the ideas that you're trying to communicate. And you also have to find opportunities to reposition quite large organizations so that the messages that they are telling to their customers make sense. This, by the way, was a high street bank that had just got a new owner. They had a new chief executive and they had no proposition in the market. And they had spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on 2 of the big 5 management consulting organizations to tell them who they were. And actually what they needed to do was sit down with themselves and decide who they were together and what the direction for the business should be. And I helped them emerge with a proposition around next generation banking, which remains in place 2 years later, and which has been very powerful for them in all their design and communication strategies. I'm very fortunate that I am able to stay connected to the design practice as well, and I spend 4 days a month working as the consulting director on strategy for Tangerine Design in London. And Tangerine's, one of their most iconic projects was the redesign of the business class for British Airways back in 2000. And you'll notice that obviously the seating arrangement here is yin-yang seating, and that was completely unique to the airline industry. It is patented, which is why no one else has copied it. Virgin have got their herringbone seating and so on, but nobody has been able to copy this, and this is the highest optimum use of the space that you can have in the cabin. British Airways invested £200 million in that, and they recovered that investment in 8 months back in 2000. In 2004, they came back to Tangerine, and Tangerine did some ingenious thinking around the structure and did a redesign which actually provided in the same footprint 25% more width and 8 inches more pitch for the passenger in the same footprint of seat. Another £200 million spent, recovered in under a year. So I think there's something about this design thing that's very powerful, and I think more and more businesses are starting to understand it. And one thing they find difficult to understand is that a small company, a small creative design company, Tangerine's 15 people, can actually make that level of difference for a company, and that they can also work in different areas, whether it's for an airline seat or for a new suite of peripherals for a computer company in Korea, or whether it's positioning and building a visual language for a client company to help them develop a mobile phone for a particular market. So I think these strategies and these positionings are really important, particularly at the current time where companies are trying to compete on creativity and innovation. And yet the design sector as a sector is very small. This is European figures, and you can see that 6% of design companies are more than 50 people in size, whereas over 70% are between 1 and 9 people. So this is a very small industry. The design consulting sector is very tiny, and across Europe it's very fragmented. And that means it falls below the policy radar, even though we know that longitudinal research, this from the Design Council in London, shows that those companies that invest in design outperform other companies in the long term, even in a recession. So of course, many of us now are looking over our shoulders a little bit to what's happening in Asia. And I thought I'd take a few moments to talk about, just offer a few thoughts on Asia. One of the key things about China, for example, is that they understand the power of innovation. And they understand the connection between innovation and science and technology, and the relationship of that to the advancement and everlasting driving power of national prosperity. And I know that in the current program, or the current plan for China, creativity is also a very significant aspect. So they're allying creativity to innovation. And I think that that is going to have a significant impact over the next 5 to 10 years. And this was a sign in Nanjing Airport, and it was on a water cooler, just in the corner, a water cooler in the airport, and it said, "Designed in China, made for the world." Not made in China. Designed in China, made for the world. So I think there's a lot of very strong influences coming from Asia. How many people here have heard of these companies? Put your hands up if you've heard of even one of these companies. I'm seeing one hand up. These are 3 of the largest manufacturers of white goods in the world. And these companies have a very strong influence in terms of shaping the design agenda, I think, in the next 5 years. This was the opening of Wuxi, had a design summit. They were appointed as China's first industrial design city, and 5,000 people turned up for the opening of the conference. This is in Shunde in 2009, the end of 2009, I was involved with the development of a program there for the second industrial design city. We know that their in-house capacity is increasing in terms of the design talent that they're using, because of course they're using a lot of international design talent. And we know that the creative tradable services are getting better as well. So those design companies are getting better at what they do. And we also know that they're very focused on creating clusters, creative industry parks, design industry parks. And this was some training I was involved in, training 125 managers. These are managers and companies. Look at the age of them. 125 managers and companies about how to make use of design. If we go to Korea, we know that Korea has had 5-year plans for the last 15 years, and their current plan is saying that by 2015 they will have 95% of the design capacity of Western industrialized nations. We know that they've been a world design capital, that Seoul was world design capital in 2010, and that they have a very ambitious agenda and a very aggressive agenda to bring design to the top table, to make design something that's a significant tool for building and growing their nation and national prosperity. And this is Mayor Oh, the mayor of Seoul, who's an inspiring speaker and very, very focused on design as a method to help him change Seoul from being a hard city to being a soft city. India launched its design policy back in February 2008. South Africa is looking at the development of a design policy. I've been working a little bit with them on a one voice strategy. And even in the Middle East, Qatar, for example, I spent 2 years, over a period of 2 years, working in Qatar for Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser Al Misnad. And what's fascinating about her is that she sees that in a society that has become exceedingly wealthy in a very short period of time, that she actually needs design and design thinking to help the society maintain its entrepreneurial edge. She is trying to find an opportunity to create prosperity of mind and behaviour, not just wealth creation. And there was various pieces of work done there to create an international design zone. If we look to Europe, then we know that some significant things have happened at the European level in the last 2 or 3 years with regard to design. Of course, back in March last year, the European Union launched its replacement for the Lisbon Agenda, which is called Europe 2020. And inside Europe 2020, they then created a flagship initiative called the Innovation Union. In other words, the union of 27 member states needs to be an innovation union if we are going to survive the challenges of the next 10 years. And thanks to the work of BEDA, and I know Isabelle Roche, the Vice President of BEDA, will speak about this later today, we've been able to get design positioned at the European level, which has immediately this year unlocked €3 million for design. There's going to be a call for proposals in hopefully in July. And it's already also unlocked €7.5 million for initiatives within the creative industries, of which design, of course, is a part. Coming down a level and looking at what's happening in regions or in member states, I think just this year there's been an interesting initiative has taken place in Flanders. And in fact, I spent over a period again of about a year running some workshops with them, bringing together 13 stakeholders for design in the region of Flanders. And 6 of those, Design Platform Limburg, Design Vlaanderen, Design Regio Kortrijk, the Flanders Fashion Institute, Flanders in Shape and Humanovation, have actually come together to create a vision for design for Flanders. And they've actually motivated the opportunity to create a charter for design in Flanders. And that on the 29th of March, that was signed by the Prime Minister and Minister of Economy, the Vice President of the Government and the Minister of Innovation, and the Minister of Environment, Nature and Culture. So I think that this design message, its time has come in a sense, in that politicians understand it, businesses are beginning to understand it, and I think that the opportunity for dialogue across boundaries has never been better. The opportunity has never been better than now. And I think this conference is an example of the dialogue that can take place in the future. I thought I'd show a couple of case studies very quickly. I've probably about 10 minutes left from industry. And this is working with Channel 4, which might be known to some of you. And it's a broadcaster in the UK. And they understood that they needed to redevelop their online presence, all their digital, the voice of the digital presence online, the .com, the blogs, all the rest of it. And they knew that they couldn't do this alone. They knew that the design department, the media design department, could create a nice website or whatever. But they knew that they had to have a deeper dialogue with their customers and internally before they would actually have a solution that would have longevity, a solution that would be sustainable. And it's very interesting what happens in a dialogue when you bring people from different areas together. So this looks a fairly modest sort of room with some stuff up on the wall, but actually what we have here is both the client at quite a senior level. So the finance director is in the room, although he's actually just to the left of the photograph, but he is there, and the head of operations, and you've got the director of digital media and the in-house designer for mobile TV, along with the designers. And this conversation, which led to the online presence at the moment, was something that took place over a period of maybe, I think it was 18 months and 6 workshops, actually bringing these people together to find direction so that all of the stakeholders at the highest level of the business, as well as the design service providers, actually had a stake in what was going to happen. And that's been really, really successful. If I go to the manufacturing sector and think about the shoe industry, I was involved in a brand strategy positioning process, working with a small, well, not that small, with a family-owned manufacturing company in Brazil, making shoes. And this is actually the top team. So we have the production director, the technical director, external advertising company, the head of sales and marketing, the chief executive, who's the son of the father. So it's a family-owned business, so the chief executive looks quite young. He's a head that's 20 years older than his age on his shoulders. The group design director, the creative designer, and then that's Martin Derbyshire at the end from Tangerine Design. And this process allowed these people to spend 2 days working on the vision for a new sports leisure shoe. And the sports leisure shoe was significant for them because all of their history they've been working in women's wear. And this was the first product that they were introducing to allow them to break into the menswear market. So how do you introduce a brand from a menswear brand into a women's wear brand without diluting either one, just maintaining the messages? And these workshops use images, we use words, we use a lot of opportunities to get people to really say what they're thinking and what they're meaning, to be able to then get to some sort of mapping which gets to a point where you get dialogue across the different parts of the company, leading to a point of recognition that there is a direction, that they know the direction they're going forward in. And this was just right at the end of the workshop. And that has led to a range of sketches and so on, which has allowed the company then to take that product development forward. And that menswear shoe, not the one you saw, but a menswear shoe is going into market in the next 3 months. If I then, still trying to stay with this sort of design, marketing, dialogue across agendas, I thought I would just finish with a few words about some experiences I've had working with Bath Spa in the UK. Now, I don't know how many of you know Bath Spa, some of you know it. It's a World Heritage Site, and it's probably the most complete Georgian architecture city in the world. And this is the very famous crescent, the Royal Crescent in Bath. And it also is a very significant Roman city as well, which is why it's a spa. The Romans came there because of the hot waters, the hot springs. It's a heritage city. It's a very beautiful heritage city. And it's dying. And it's dying because it hasn't been able to message itself or to create a public realm which attracts young people, attracts new businesses. Now, they do have some. They have a very strong film industry and they have a very strong software industry on the outside. But nevertheless, the studies show that over the next 50 years, 60 years, if they don't start to change the way the city works for its people, to stop being a museum piece or to stop being only a museum, then its future is quite difficult. So for the first time, a year and a half ago, I was involved in helping to create the first ever strategy for the public realm for the city, working with a small company called City ID in Bristol. Fantastic guys, really great people. And a result of that was to then create a dialogue with the stakeholders in the city. Now, these stakeholders were meeting for the first time in July a year ago. And previous to that, the City Council had introduced a contemporary design into the heritage core of the city. It went over budget. It caused enormous amounts of pain and strife for the City Council. They had very strong and vocal representatives from different organisations in the city telling them that what they were doing was wrong, they were ruining the city by introducing contemporary architecture, etc., etc. A very painful process. They did deliver the contemporary architecture in the end, and in fact, 5 years later, it's been very, very successful. Nevertheless, these people never really spoke to each other. So the council knew that in developing opportunities for design in the public realm, they had to find a way to get the people to dialogue together. And the first thing you do before you dialogue is listen. You have to listen to the different points of view. So getting these 36 people into the room was quite scary for the council. But we managed to go through a process where we got them working together to build the values for the city centre. Saying, look, we're not doing any design work, we're not making any changes from this point forward until we've heard what you've got to tell us, until you've been involved in the process. So building shared language through words, through images, sharing points of view, actually getting these people as non-designers to work on and add advice to real design problems in the city centre. And then having ongoing meetings of the stakeholder group, introducing them to product developments for street furniture, for example, as the process moved forward. And that has led then to a product range which is going in street now. It's just since March that it's been going into the street. So in other words, we've been able to introduce a contemporary, iconic form, almost a sculptural form, into the heritage streetscape. And all of the stakeholders have said, fine, it's okay, it's good, I understand what this means now. So that dialogue has allowed us to introduce a very significant wayfinding for the first time into the city centre, and it's also, in the last 6 months, unlocked a further £64 million for development of the public realm. So I think if you get your dialogue right, it can actually unlock fantastic benefits. I'm just coming to a close now. Back in December 2005, the Design Council there was a review set up by the government, Tony Blair's government at that time, Gordon Brown's government, looking at creativity in business. And at that time, he said there was a problem in dialogue in design. He said, we produce people in art schools who don't understand the language of business, and business people who don't understand how to manage innovation. How can we combine their skills? Now, of course, those are generalizations. There are many, many companies that understand how to manage innovation, and there are many good design companies and art-based companies that understand business. But generally speaking, these two worlds stay quite far apart from each other. And I think that one of the binding opportunities, if you can get the dialogue right, is access to creativity. If you can help people understand that they have a creative contribution to make to the discussion in hand, that they have something to bring to that discussion, then I think you have a far better chance of creating success. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that's been interesting for you. It's been interesting for me to have the opportunity to speak at short notice, and thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time.